the way that I think about money now in my life is it's a beautiful energy. I think it's spiritual. It's designed to help you more fully express who you are on this planet. But we grow up with a bunch of gunk about money. We're told rich people are greedy. We're told that people are evil who have more money than us. We're taught lack. We're taught scarcity. None of this is actually ultimately true. This is what's so beautiful and what's so powerful. Money is just an amplifier of who you're being.
Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast, a space dedicated to one belief that you have the power within to create everything you seek. So if you are ready to step into a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with me. I'm your host, Rudi Riekstins, and this is the Empowered Life. Welcome to the Empowered Life Podcast. My name is Rudi Riekstins. I'm your host, and today's guest is changing the conversation around what actually creates extraordinary sales results. There isn't a person on the planet who does not want to make more money. And Elyse Archer is the founder of She Sells and Superhuman Selling. She's an international speaker and one of the leading voices in identity-driven sales growth. Her work goes far beyond scripts, tactics, sales, closing techniques. She believes that our businesses can only grow as far as we are willing to grow ourselves. And today we're going to unpack exactly what that means. Elyse, welcome so much. I'm just beyond excited to have you on the Empowered Life Podcast.
Thank you, Rudy. I'm so happy to be here. Like I was saying in the pre-chat, I feel like you're like my soul brother. Like there's some cool stuff we're going to talk about today. So I can't wait. And I'm honored to be here.
I love you. I love your work. I love how you show up. We approach work very similarly. We're in different spaces, but I really do believe that we share the same coding, if you will, because how you approach what you're doing is just so good. And I wish more people had this level of understanding. And so I'm going to dive in. Typically, I'd want to bring our audience to the forefront. Like, who are you? Where did you come from? How did you? And right now, I just want to get to the juice as best as I possibly can. And through this, people are going to learn a little bit more about you and your story. Obviously, you're impacting thousands and thousands and thousands of people at a time. You have a community that supports people to step into the inner knowing, into their power. But I'm going to start with something I mentioned when we had the introduction, and that was that every single person on the planet wants to make more money. You say that results are really going to outperform your identity. And I would love for you to unpack what does that mean and how is somebody's identity holding them back?
Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. And maybe I can share my own personal journey there just briefly, because I think sometimes things are easier in a story. So part of why I am so passionate about sales and selling is I came up in that environment and right out of college went into sales in a very like masculine energy, kind of hustle grind type of culture and rose up the ranks in corporate. But then what I found was no matter how hard I worked, no matter how many hours I worked, I'd get up at 2 a.m. I'd go to bed at 11. So I was working on like 2, 3 hours of sleep a night. I could never break past an income plateau. And for me, it was low six figures. And I would hustle, I would grind. I, again, kind of on the outside, had built a lot of the life I thought I was supposed to build to be successful and fulfilled and happy. And I was generally near at the top of the leaderboard, had a nice house, had a nice car. But inside, I was struggling so much, Rudy. I had crippling anxiety, panic attacks, and eating disorder. I was really ashamed about it, embarrassed. I wasn't telling anyone about it. I was in a marriage that was really unhealthy and a lot of toxic stuff there. And the beautiful thing about it is it propelled me on a journey to figure out why is it that I'm doing all the right things and yet it feels so off inside. And I know you support people with this so much too. So I think that's where some of the alignment, like the beautiful alignment is here. And I went on a journey. I actually left corporate selling and became an entrepreneur, teaching sales coaching and working with sales professionals to grow their income. But funny enough, then even as an entrepreneur, I was still making the same amount of money, right? As an entrepreneur, your income is generally uncapped. You can make as much as you want. But I had a lot of money anxiety, a lot of fears about it. Even if I would have what I considered a good month, I would have a lot of nervousness about, can I do it again the next month? I was the breadwinner in our family. I'd gotten remarried at the time. And I think that we learn the things we're meant to teach in life. And so I started saying, okay, I'm doing all the right things. Technically, I know how to sell, I know how to build a funnel, I know how to do these things. Why am I still feeling stuck? About 10 years of being stuck at the same income level. Long story short, because I know we're jumping right into it today, I had some events happen in my life all around the same time that propelled me to say, I'm done being stuck. I had a good friend of mine pass away at age 39 in his sleep. He was actually my podcast co host, left behind a wife and 5 kids. No one saw it coming. He just didn't wake up one morning. I gave birth to our first son right around that time as well. And I remember just thinking, I am done at playing small. I'm done doing what I call putting my life on layaway, saying I want more for my life, but constantly being consumed with thoughts of anxiety, fear, worry about money. And I was like, I'm doing all the right things on the outside. Why is it not shifting? I knew I had to make a change. I invested what felt like an exorbitant amount of money to myself at the time, to the old version of me at the time, in private coaching with a mentor to figure out why is it that I'm so stuck, even though I'm doing all the right things. I started deep diving, studying spirituality, like wealth energetics, identity, neuroscience, embodiment. Think about like Joe Dispenza's work. I love Bob Proctor. I started getting really under the hood. And what happened, Rudy, was in that period of time, I went from being stuck at the same income level for over 10 years to turning my annual income into my monthly income in 6 weeks. It happened so fast. I honestly couldn't believe it. But when I looked back on it, people would say, well, what did you do? I actually worked less during that time than I ever had before. It felt uncomfortable because I was so used to grinding. I thought that was the only way to be successful. It was an inner game. It was an inner shift. I actually learned how to take on the identity of a seven-figure earner and who she was, what she was available for, what she wasn't. I started seeing myself as more worthy. One of the things I really came to understand during that time was your level of income will never exceed your level of self-worth. And so I really started to notice what are the places where I'm shrinking, where I'm playing small, where I have money wounding around stuff related to my dad, my mom, stuff growing up. And I cleared that. I worked on clearing it. And the additional income came in so fast. I couldn't believe it. I was like, it's been waiting there this entire time. And I just had to do this. Are you kidding me? But so I think we say in my company with my clients, your results will never supersede your identity because so many of us have been taught if you want a different result, you've got to do something different. Yes. And I work within a lot of organizations and companies, you probably do too, where everyone has the same sales playbook. Everyone has the same strategy book. Why is it then that two people with the same strategy are getting completely different results? It's not the strategy. One of them identifies as a top producer, a top performer. The other identifies as maybe a failure, unworthy, unsuccessful. They have fears about success. So you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have the identity to support and hold the results, it's not going to happen. And this is neuroscience based. You know this. I know you teach this with your audience and your community as well. So happy to expand on that or take that wherever you want, but that's my own personal experience. And what I know now is anytime we want a different result, you must go to identity first, then take a different action from there. But it's always, always, always identity embodiment first.
I love that you started that way because there's so many people that are going to be listening to this thinking, I want to make more money, but she just touched on, oh, I had to think about how my dad did this or how this happened in my past. And they don't want to touch those things. They just want to get to the making the more money part. You also mentioned these experiences that kind of shifted something in you. And one was the loss of your friend. And I'm deeply and profoundly sorry for your loss. And then the birth of your first son. And I think that this is so important to touch on because so often in life, we don't want to change until change is forced upon us. And that forced change comes through pain. And for so many people, they need to experience the pain to eventually get to the point where, all right, I've had enough. I don't want to do this again. And then they want to do something different. And so you had two completely different experiences. One was you see the cost of losing somebody so young and realize, man, I'm not going to put my life on layaway anymore. I'm not going to put it on pause. And then you see the birth of a new life and you're like, I want to be around. And now you know what the cost would be of not creating that change. In the work that you do, how could you support someone right now who doesn't now need to go through that experience if you could support them in shifting so that they are open and ready to start doing some of this identity work.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Joe Dispenza has a quote around this, and this is going to be a rough paraphrase, but he talks about it's similar that we change under two circumstances. It's either pain, trauma, loss, or we can choose proactively to make that change on our own. And to me, part of wisdom and soul growth, and I think we're all on a different journey. And I've had so many experiences in my life where I had to be brought to a point of a lot of pain in order to be willing to change. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it, but I do think that as we grow and develop on our journey, wisdom starts to say, what if I didn't have to go through so much of that? Not that we don't have things that are, I personally believe in soul contracts and experience to help shape us. So I don't think there's anything wrong if someone's going through a painful moment like that. I think that's part of life. But I do think that we can start to learn to let our desires guide us. So, one of the things I believe is that your desires are green lights. So, someone could be listening to this and say, yes, I want more for my life. I want to fill in the blanks. There's no right or wrong here, right? I want to drive a G Wagon. I want to give more generously to charity. I want to support my mom and buy her a home. I want to upgrade my wardrobe. I'm a big believer you can wear the Louboutins and donate to charity, and it's all good, right? But I believe our desires, I used to make myself so wrong for them, and probably a lot of that's like my Southern Baptist upbringing and a lot of hellfire and brimstone, and it's no judgment on anyone's particular path, but I had a lot of judgment on my desires for a long time. I believe that that is the divine expressing through you, that as you go for the thing, whether it's the maybe a bigger home for your family or like you and Addison in Montana relocating, it's because there's better good for everyone, right? And if you can trust that, and if you can learn to tune into, I mean, the word desire literally means of the Father, right? The Latin etymology. So if you can learn to tune into that and say, what is lighting me up right now? What would feel so exciting? What is the fullest expression of me? And then the key is, again, your analytical mind is gonna try to say, "Okay, how am I gonna make it happen?" You don't if you already knew how to make it happen, you would have made it happen by now. The power of the subconscious mind is to bring that into form and to give you the how once it accepts the idea. So to start to embody it, to start to visualize it, to start to feel with energetically, and to know that it's going to be a double blessing for others. Whether you inspire other people by the actions you're taking, whether you accumulating more abundance for yourself allows you to give more generously and help support other people, it's a double blessing. I know that too. So I don't think it has to be through pain, although we can certainly alchemize the pain into something good. But I had a mentor once say, let it be easy. What if you let it be easy? What if we let our growth be easy sometimes and allowed those desires to guide, but you got to focus on identity first. And we have an exercise I can walk you and your listeners through if that's helpful for how do you develop that identity, but tell me where you want to go from there first.
I want to actually dive right into that. And I'm going to set the stage with a story I love to bring up when somebody is asking this question in coaching or from stage. People say, I want to make $1 million. And
Yeah.
to them, that just feels like such a big, almost impossible number. And then they say, I've only ever made 100 or I've made 150. And I don't know, how do I bridge that? How do I get from 100, 150 to $1 million? And I'm going to ask you to answer that question in a moment. But I always pose the question, well, what comes first? Do you first have to make $1 million to be a millionaire? Or do you first have to be a millionaire and the money follows? And I would love for you to use that to bring us into how would somebody shift their identity and then obviously introduce us to your quadrants of
Yeah.
quantum sales, because I think that really plays a massive part in how we shift our identity.
Yeah. Well, I love how you answer that question. I do. I think it's spot on, and probably it turns a lot of people's thinking on its head, right? So
Mhm.
it's the embodiment, the process that we have clients do, and it's so basic, but it works. It's an exercise that we use called new personality, old personality. It's super sexy. You pull out a spreadsheet. All right, for my non-spreadsheet people out there, grab a Google Doc, grab your AI, I don't know. But I really like to do this from the heart, not from AI first. Like, you can have it enhance stuff. We did this before everyone was using AI for everything. Now you can have it enhance stuff for you, but don't go there first. Go into your heart and your imagination and your soul and your vision first. We've got a free training that I think you're gonna share in the show notes. So we do have a free training on this too that'll be linked. But the gist of it is we want to look at and recognize that the law of cause and effect is a universal law that states that everything in your life, every effect in your life, you are some way, shape, or form the cause. So this is not saying that tragic things that happen that you need to take responsibility that's not yours. That's not what I'm saying. But in some way, shape, or form, we have been available for the things happening in our life. We've been kind of dancing with someone else in a way that maybe is unhealthy or toxic. We've been available to not make as much money as we want, right? So it's taking full ownership, and it's so freeing because you realize if I want a different effect in my life, I get to be the cause, right? I'm gonna be the cause of it. So I heard it said this way once by a woman on YouTube. I don't know her name, otherwise I would give her credit, but she said, "Make your goal not so much about manifesting the end result as about manifesting the version of you with the end result accomplished, and the end result must happen." And so with this spreadsheet, what you're gonna look at is, again, you're gonna take a sheet of paper, a spreadsheet, 2 columns. One of them is gonna be old personality, one of them is gonna be new personality. Underneath each of those, you're gonna have 3 sections: thoughts, feelings, and actions. And then you just wanna look at, all right, for someone, let's use your example of someone is currently making 100,000 and they wanna make 1,000,000. Sometimes it helps to take yourself out of the picture if you feel too closely related to it, but to say, okay, if someone in my space was making $1,000,000, what thoughts would they likely be thinking? Right, they'd be thinking thoughts of, "Wow, I can't wait to share this with my family." Write it down. They'd be thinking thoughts of, "Oh my gosh, I have so many amazing clients. I love working with all of them." Write it down. "Wow, I love that I get to work with this wait list of incredible clients." Write it down. "How am I gonna give this money away?" Write it down. So you get really clear on what are the thoughts I'd be thinking. Under feelings, this is important, and I don't think that we are taught, very many of us, at least growing up, or certainly in the business world, the importance of our feeling state, why it matters. It matters from a manifestation standpoint. It matters from a neuroscience standpoint because we can't think beyond the level of our emotional state. So we all have these old emotional addictions, old emotions that we get attached to that feel like us, but they are keeping you trapped in your current reality. So you want to go to, all right, when I'm at $1,000,000, how am I feeling? What are my normal feelings? Freedom, right? You don't want the million because you wanna see a number in your bank account. You want it for the feeling you think it's gonna give you. Freedom, peace, generosity, right? Write those down. And then the third thing is you're gonna write down from that level, what actions am I taking? This is actually part of how we can skip levels with where we're going is you start thinking about, well, from the million, what actions would I be taking, not the actions I'm taking today. So you say, I'd be thinking about hiring my next team member, right? Or I would be planning where I'm gonna take my family on our next trip. I'd be planning my next donation. I want you to write all of those things down. You're developing a character of you, but it's not in a way of trying to be someone you're not. I think it's about removing the masks of everyone you were told you weren't over the years. It's about removing the constrictions or the limitations, not about trying to be someone who you're not inherently at a soul level. I think this is really the true you who starts to emerge here. He or she is more unlimited, more abundant, more expansive. That's always the direction of spirit. And now, with zero judgment, but simply awareness, on the old personality side, you're going to do the same thing and you're going to take an inventory. And you're going to say, all right, what thoughts have I been thinking that I would not be thinking from the end? I've been thinking thoughts of, how am I going to pay this bill? Write it down. I've been thinking thoughts of, there's not enough. Write it down. Those are thought patterns that are living in your mind that are keeping you attached to the old reality. Then you're going to go to feelings and you're going to say, what feelings am I feeling consistently that I don't think align with where I'm going? Anxiety, fear, worry, right? Again, they feel like you, but they're not actually the real you. Those are emotional addictions, old emotional addictions that are keeping you attached to the past. Write it down. And then actions. What actions are you currently taking that you would not be taking from that new reality? Procrastinating, dimming your voice, not going for it, not investing in yourself, not hiring that team member, write it down. And then here's the key is once you have that list, you're gonna get an opportunity to self-define. You're gonna get an opportunity come up to decide, "How am I gonna show up today?" And it's gonna be if you do it right, it's gonna feel like a pattern interrupt. Maybe you'll get an opportunity to invest in yourself in coaching or mentoring with someone who really resonates with you. The old version of you might have said, "That doesn't make any sense, I don't have the money." But what does the new version say? "I always find a way for what I want. I know that there's endless resources and you find a way to make it happen and then you must take action, right? Or you show up differently on your client calls. Maybe you've got one client right now or two clients right now, but you show up on that call like you've got a wait list of 50. That's the embodiment. My clients talk about it as though they're doing, when they're really in this, it feels like mental gymnastics. You'll stop yourself in the middle of a sentence, in the middle of a argument with your partner, something that the old you would have done. And you're like, no, we don't do that anymore. And you shift in the moment. You do that enough times, you actually become the new you. So we can absolutely go into meditation, visualization to reprogram the subconscious. I recommend that. And day to day life, you also get to embody this. And that's why it has to be such a decision that I'm done playing small and I'm ready for change. Otherwise, you're not willing to actually put in the effort to do that. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. And I want to make this tangible for the audience that's listening to this because you work with so many people that are in sales environments and they want to increase the level of capacity, coaches, mentors, so on. But I want to make this applicable to the local school teacher who's aspiring to make more money, to anyone and everyone, because this is really so powerful. I was originally from South Africa, and South Africa being a third world country, the US dollar exchange not so great from South Africa to the US, but I worked in the US and made US dollars in the cruise industry in my I was like 22 years old. And I'll never forget my first paycheck that was in a sales role was $28,000. And we're going back almost 30 years. And when I transferred that into my South African currency, which was rands at the time, it was 16 to 1, which
Mm.
means I made hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of rand, my currency. I was so wealthy. In 1 minute, I went from nothing to I had so much. And I remember that feeling. And I was sitting behind a computer when I opened up this pay stub and I saw my commissions. Now, just to give context, they had a problem transferring my money. So I had 3 months worth of paychecks that were waiting. And the biggest was 28 and 23 and 20, whatever it was. So there was 60 to $70,000 that was sitting in my account. And as I opened it to see what had all come through in one go in one day, the feeling to me felt like my feet were not touching the floor. When I was walking, I felt like I was 2 inches off the ground. My body felt like it was expansive out of what I believe. I felt like I was someone else. I was walking down a hallway and there were all these people in the hallway. And I remember thinking, I have a secret and no one knows. I became rich and it went from not to having. And it was this most beautiful, expansive feeling. And so I went and sat in my room and I wrote a letter to myself describing the feeling. And then
Mm.
I put it in my wallet. And every time I questioned my worth, every time I felt like, oh, but I'm going to have to pay more in taxes, I was like, oh no, that's lack. I read my letter and I would go to it again and again. And I began to memorize the feeling of what that felt like. And then my income only ever expanded, even though I changed jobs, careers over the years. It just became more and more, but I always have that one single memory. So today, when I do this work and I go into an organization or work with an individual and put them into a meditative state, and I ask the question, you have everything that you want. How do you feel? How do you
Mm.
walk? What are you wearing? And I remember this person coming to me afterwards, and this was in a room with about 500 people at work. And this gentleman came to me afterwards and he goes, when you ask the question, how do you feel? What are you wearing? How do you walk? He goes, I looked down and I realized, oh, the millionaire version of me doesn't wear jeans. I hate jeans, and all I wear today are jeans. And so he stopped wearing genes. And that's the point. We get to embody the version of who we want to become. And so if you are the school teacher and you're aspiring to create more money and you're only earning so much, it's about who do you become, and it changes how you think and changes how you feel. I love, love, love so much that you're bringing this to the episode today, because everything really is about how we think, how we feel, and then how we're going to show up to how we're thinking and feeling. I want you to speak into a topic that for me, I love talking about the quantum field more than anything in the world. And you've brought the quantum field into business and you've been able to do it in a way where people can sell. Now, I know that this is aimed mostly at people in a sales environment, but I'm going to bring all of our teachers, anyone that is an entrepreneur or anyone who is aspiring to make more, to lean in and listen to this, because you've got four quadrants,
Mm.
but only one of them is really about tactics. And
Yeah.
everything else is really about how do we show up prior to that. And this is where I think everybody needs to lean in. Please take us through the quadrants of quantum sales growth.
Absolutely. Yes. I love it. It applies to everyone, Rudy. It really does. The way money works, and I'll dive into the quadrants in a second, but let's say someone's listening and they're a teacher. They up level their wealth consciousness and they're available for more. They're like, I'm ready to be a millionaire. Money can come through a lot of different channels, right? So either something will shift, will elevate in your current role to allow that increase to come in, or you'll have an opportunity come in that's different, but it's gonna align with where you're going. So sometimes people can hear this and say, "Well, there's no way I could make more, blah, blah." I want you to get out of limitation. Your current job is just a channel. Your current role, your company, your business, it's a channel. So we've gotta be available for how it's meant to come in and for more. I wanna say one thing too, and then we'll do the 4 quadrants. The feeling that you mentioned experiencing, it's so interesting to me that you felt that way. I felt that way the moment I realized I had turned my annual income into my monthly income. It was the exact same feeling. So I'm curious, I've never really talked to anyone about that before, but is that the feeling everyone feels when this happens? I don't know. It's interesting to think about because I think part of wealth is like you normalize that over time and you don't feel so ungrounded in it, right? But the first time it happens, I had a very similar experience. So I love that you captured that and that you help people feel that now when you're working with them. So, looking back at the experience of 10xing in 6 weeks after being stuck and in the suck for so I don't wanna say the suck because it wasn't
I
all
love
bad,
that. The
really.
suck. We all
It
know
felt
what that feels like, the suck.
you know what it's like where you're like, "Why am I not getting it? Why do I keep bumping up against a ceiling?" That's what it felt like for 10 years. So to have that suddenly removed into 10x in 6 weeks, it felt quite extraordinary. But I looked back, and this was really to me, it was like a God thing, a spirit thing, a source thing, where this method just downloaded afterwards. I was thinking about it, I was reflecting on it, and I said, "That's how it happened." It's called the 4 quadrants of quantum sales growth. We're gonna link a free training in the resources for your audience. But to your point, so there is one quadrant that is tactical, that's strategic. I have been fortunate to coach and mentor billionaires, top 10 podcasters, New York Times bestselling authors, so I know strategy inside and out. And I knew strategy, but I was still stuck. So I was like, something's off with this. So we called it the 4 M's to make it a little easy to remember. And there's a visual that you'll see in the training. But this is what really happened during that 6 week period and what anyone can do for themselves if they want to transform. So the first is mind over matter. Now, when I say mind over matter, what I'm curious, Rudy, what do you think? What do most people think of when we say mind over matter? What's the association with that?
I would say we have to shift our mind from whatever is happening in our physical reality to have an illusion that it's better.
Yeah, yeah. You see, I can't even ask you this because you get it immediately. You you understand, right? So that's exactly what it is. I think that a lot of us, at least I was taught growing up, mind over matter is like push through. It doesn't matter how you feel, but it's exactly what you said. It's how our mind, our thinking, our identity literally influences the physical 3D matter in your world. So with this, we remember your results will never supersede your identity. So if someone is listening and they're a teacher and maybe they're making, I don't know, 50, 60, maybe 100,000 a year if they're doing really well, they want to be a millionaire. You have to start to get clear on who is the version of you as a millionaire. Do the old personality, new personality exercise, and then focus on embodiment. Okay. The second quadrant is money. I love wealth energetics. I love spirituality of wealth. It's so good. I think money is such a beautiful tool for a long time in my life. And when I was stuck, I made it God. I made it more important than me. I made it bigger than me. I remember working with a client once who, similar to the story you shared of working with people on stage and who want to go to a million, he was in a B2B tech sales role, but he wanted to launch a company and he wanted to make $1 million. And we were sitting on a coaching call, and I said, "Great, tell me why." I could see his shoulders kind of slump, and he sat back and he said, "Validation. Then I'll finally feel good enough." And I knew that feeling because for so long I chased money because I thought then I would be good enough. When I make that amount, then I'll feel good enough about myself. Here's the thing to know about money, and there's so much. Again, we deep dive into the training so your listeners can go way deeper into this than we have time for today. But the way that I think about money now in my life is it's a beautiful energy. I think it's spiritual. It's designed to help you more fully express who you are on this planet. But we grow up with a bunch of gunk about money. We're told rich people are greedy. We're told that people are evil who have more money than us. We're taught lack. We're taught scarcity. None of this is actually ultimately true. This is what's so beautiful and what's so powerful. Money is just an amplifier of who you're being. It's kind of like a knife, right? In the hands of a five-star chef, it creates a beautiful meal for a family that they can enjoy together. In the hands of a murderer, it's not going to do good. It's the same. It's neutral, right? It's whatever you think of it. It's just going to amplify who you are. But it's an important tool that most of us need on this planet in order to be able to fulfill our destiny. So we want to help you clear out limiting money beliefs, old stuff you picked up on from your parents. There's a lot of dynamics too that we're not aware of that influence why a lot of people feel like they struggle with money. For example, whoever represented money to you growing up, whether that was your dad, your mom, or both, they represented safety and security for you growing up. That energy lives in your first energy center of your body. Money does the same. Money, for most people, and not at a spiritual level, but for most people, money represents safety and security on this planet. It lives in that same energy center. However, you felt like you had to show up with your parents to be safe, secure, loved, you will tend to overlay the same characteristics on money unconsciously. So if you felt like you had to be perfect to receive love from dad, you will feel like you have to be perfect in order to make money. I work with clients where maybe there was a parent who was an alcoholic and it felt up and down and all over the place and you didn't know how they were going to show up. You will tend to have a roller coaster experience with money until you neutralize that. So we don't realize that it's not actually about the money. It's never actually about the money. That's part of in my own journey why I quantum leaped so fast was I figured out how to get under the hood and realize it was never about the money in the first place. It was about my self-worth. It was about healing with mom and dad. It was a lot of that. So there's that. The third quadrant is masculine and feminine. And I love this one. Sometimes I'll get called in to train this to a group of men. I remember last year I was brought in to do a keynote for 200 modular building reps up in Canada. And it was mostly men. I was like, are they going to be open and receptive to this? I don't know. So it was fun. We did some sports analogies and it worked. But you're going to get this. Your audience is going to get this. This is masculine and feminine energetics. It doesn't have to do with being a man or a woman per se. We all have both energies, but masculine energy is very goal oriented, driven. It's structure, it's methodical. It's kind of like this glass of water here. It's the actual cup that's holding the water. It's the structure, it's the form. It's important. We need that. However, feminine energy is the water inside. It's the vision, it's the inspiration, it's the feeling state, it's the quantum leap. You will never quantum leap from pure masculine energy. It's too logical, it's too linear. If anyone is listening to this and you're in grind or things feel hard or they feel heavy, you're in masculine. You're way in your masculine. Nothing wrong with that. But I have found in my own experience, the more I learn how to trust, to lean into the feminine, to pull in divine energy, and then to let the masculine support that, that's the energy of the quantum leap. So we want to learn that balance for both. When I'm working with women, a lot of times it's helping them learn to trust their feminine energy and to integrate that, but then also to put the proper structures in place to help support them. When I'm working with men, a lot of times it's how do you tap into flow state? How do you get excited again? What would it be like to let it feel easier than it feels like success is right now? So again, we all need both, but it's finding that integration. And most clients I work with have been way in their masculine. That's actually why they're stuck. The final quadrant is method. This is strategy. And this is great. I love strategy. Strategy is beautiful. We teach it, we train it. I've implemented it with a lot of different clients across virtually any industry you can imagine. But again, according to neuroscience, that's going to be 3 to 5% of the results you get. There 95% is your identity, your beliefs, your embodiment. It's those first 3. We call them the big 3. Does that make sense? Can I go deeper into any of that for you or for the audience?
What I love about this conversation is in the very beginning, you touched on you were showing up in sales, you were waking up at 3 in the morning, you were grinding, you were in your masculine. So you already opened the door. And I'm
Mm,
sure a lot of people were like, hang on, wait, but Elyse is a woman. And I love that you're bringing it in because it's not so obvious to many people that we do carry masculine and feminine energy. When my wife met me, she thought I was gay. And it's not because I'm prissy and walking around. She said, you just had the ability to turn to a man and say to him, I love you, brother. And she was like, I've never seen a man stand in his confidence and say to another straight man, that you loved him, but you did it on your first day. Somebody had asked a question and I ended the response with, I love you, brother. And I didn't know him. And she was like, oh, he must be gay. And that is the ability to be able to be strong and to be soft.
mm,
And I love that because if we're only pushing, then we're not opening up to the intuitiveness. Coming back to the school teacher who wants to make $1 million might be sitting on an idea that can only land intuitively. But if they're too busy pushing, then they're not receptive to it. And so I'd love for you to dive into a little bit more around the masculine and the feminine, and then bridge for us because you haven't really gone into it. How do we start to take action? And when do we know we need to take action? Because that's like the smallest part of what you've
yeah.
really unfolded for us all.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I love all of these questions. So beautiful. Let's talk about the blend. And I'll actually talk about I was working with a client right before this interview today, and she was an engineer, left engineering to launch her own business. And so we're on a call this morning working on her strategy. So she's actually in her second year of coaching. And the first year was like a lot of feminine energy, a lot of clearing, a lot of wealth energetics, a lot of that. And she is in a place now where she's really excited for more structure and more support in her business. So we came into the call today with her really wanting to work on a process for pitching media, podcast, speaking, et cetera, which I've got a long background in that. So I was excited to work with her on that. But when we got on the call, the very first thing we did was we checked in with energetically how she felt around her income goal. And when she shared the number that she's working for right now, she was like, if I'm honest, I feel some constriction in my chest about it. Like I had to really tune into it. And she shared that she was noticing constriction in her chest. And it's because she wasn't aware of it. But what we got to was she was putting a timeline on her goal that was making her feel scarce, putting it like popping her straight into scarcity. So before we ever talked strategy, we did some energetic work to release that. And I found with timelines, time is really helpful when it gets you excited, when it gets you lit up. But if it's popping you into scarcity, if it's making you feel fear, if it's making you feel lack, limitation, take the time out of it. So I was like, look, do you trust that at some point in your career you're going to make this amount of money? She was like, yeah, I know I will. I was like, why? Tell me why. And she starts going into all the reasons why it's so fun, all the reasons why it's great. She loves working with these clients. The resistance dissolved. From that place of not feeling resistant to it anymore, now we were able to look at her strategy because, again, neurologically, because we can't think beyond our emotional state. If we were trying to do strategy, but she's in a state of scarcity, she's in a state of, I've got to make this happen in the next 2 weeks or else, fill in the blank, some lie her mind was telling her, we wouldn't have been able to have as powerful of a conversation about the strategy. So, from a place of relaxation and a place of openness and a place of feeling receptive to it, we could look at her calendar, we could look at her schedule, we could look at her pitch list and say, here's how you're going to do this every week in a really powerful way. So we were able to implement the masculine structure to support her, but her energy had to mirror that first in order for her to be open to it. So I think that's pretty like a typical client call and what happens there. So we want to have both, but we always lead with the feminine first. And sometimes it's purely feminine, wealth, energetic, spirituality, etc. Sometimes it's more strategy. It just depends on where someone is at. Your second question is, how do you know what action to take, right? Like, how do you bridge the gap and actually know what do you start doing from being connected to the vision? Was that it? So, Abraham Hicks has this great analogy. I love it. And they talk about how most people take action. And this is 100% how I did it for so long in my career. And it's why I didn't get anywhere. First of all, I got somewhere, but it wasn't where I wanted to get. It's the equivalent of saying, okay, I want to clean my living room. So, you get out your vacuum cleaner and you start vacuuming furiously and you're going and you're working up a sweat, but you never plugged it in. So you're taking a lot of action. You're really busy. You're doing a lot of things, but nothing's happening. That's how most of us take action when we don't know this work. It's 100% how I did it for so long in my business. It takes a lot of trust and faith to do this differently because what I'm about to tell you is going to be the opposite of what you've been told. I still get to have to ground myself in this a lot. When I'm tempted, if I'm in a human moment or I'm feeling some kind of way about something, the first instinct temptation is let me go do something. Let me try to fix it. Let me make it happen. Let me go take 5 more actions. But there's a difference between aligned action and hustle action. That's the difference, I call it. Hustle action is what most of us are taught to do, right? It's what I was taught coming up in my sales career. Whoever can make the most calls, have the most conversations, grind the most, burn the candle at both ends the most, they're the ones who are going to win. The very 3D way of doing it. Can you ultimately achieve your goals that way? Maybe, possibly. It's going to take you a lot longer. It's going to be a lot harder. You're not going to feel good when you get there. And you're going to say, I never want to do that again. You're burnt out. You're depleted. Your wife has left you. You're like, this is BS. I don't want to do this anymore. Aligned action is what happens when we plug in the vacuum cleaner. What does that actually look like? It means using the power of your mind, of your vision, to go in your mind first thing in the morning and all throughout the day as much as you can. Connect with the vision, right? What's the next goal? What's the next embodiment? Again, maybe it's you in the new home overlooking the cliffs in California. Maybe it's you driving your Bentley. Maybe it's you giving a $10,000 gift to one of your kids. I don't care what it is, something that lights your heart up, that feeling, that heart opening, that's God's source, spirit, universe speaking through you. This is the way to go. You're going to go there. You're going to connect. You're going to feel the feeling. From that state, you will have an impulse, usually, of an action to take. It may come through immediately. It may come through a little bit later, but you'll have an impulse. And this is intuition. You teach intuition so brilliantly. This is intuition. It may not make sense on the surface, but you must follow it. It may be reach out to this person, go here, do this thing. I went for a walk yesterday and I had an impulse to go somewhere I don't normally go. And when I arrived at where I felt called to go, I had a very vivid memory from 12 years ago of a part of me that I actually realized I needed to integrate and heal and bring back in to me now. And I was like, I had no idea that that was why I felt guided to go there, but I did. And bringing her back in, it was a part of me who needed to feel safe for where I'm going next in my business. But you'll find like you'll feel an impulse to reach out to someone. That person needed to hear from you that day. They're ready to buy, they're ready to sign up. So it's not that we're not going to have the masculine structures, the systems, the CRM, the email, all of it, and your calendar. I love that. But Kathleen Cameron says this. I love this. She says it's not the thing itself you're doing as the energy in which you're doing the thing. That's what's going to create the end result. And so that's the difference. So go to the end, focus on the embodiment, feel the feeling, get excited, and then notice, what do I feel called to do? It will be usually, it may be less action than you're used to taking, but it's going to stretch your old self concept. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel, I like the word butt clenching. You're going to be like, ooh, can I really do that? Can I really pitch myself for that show? Can I really reach out to that person? Yes, you must take action when you have that impulse for that feels exciting and aligned. That's it.
So beautifully, so beautifully. I spent at one point in time around $50,000 to build a funnel with one of the top companies. This is 6 years ago. And then we poured in around $10,000 a month in marketing. And after a $50,000 period of building a funnel and then putting in the money, I felt disconnected from the energy of what they'd built. And I didn't feel like my voice was in it. And so I had a choice to make. I redo it all over again, or I just shut it down, or I let them run with it until we make our money back. And I just closed it. I just said,
Mhm.
absolutely not. Here's what's interesting is I got an intuitive nudge because I sat down and I said, what do I need to do where I am right now? And I was expecting like, go to work, do this, build this thing. And I got record this meditation called the mood elevator meditation. And it's going to sound like this and feel like this. And I was like, I sell meditations for $11. Like, this isn't going to make me $50,000. I was like, this makes no sense. But I created the meditation. And just in the last week, as an example, I've sold more of those meditations because that is what brings people into my field
Mm.
than anything I've ever touched. And so it's always about following that intuitiveness, and you never know where it's connecting you to because in our minds we think, oh, well, that doesn't make sense. So I love that you're teaching it. I love that you're bringing people forward. I also want to interject that when you were talking about your clients and asking, where do you feel it? I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm sitting with Oprah Winfrey on the couch having a cup of tea, and everyone's going to want to have a call with you at the end of this. We
Mm.
are going to link, obviously, the potential to book a call with you. We're also going to link for people to go through your training that you're going to do on this quantum sales growth, which I think is just phenomenal. But I want to ask one last closing question of you as we come up on time. And you obviously are very intuitive yourself. And I love to ask people who are open and receptive to take a second to just tap into the collective consciousness of my audience and then whatever you feel they most need to hear that you most
Yeah.
qualified to answer, if you could close today's episode with that.
What a beautiful question. I'd be so happy to. I'm feeling collectively right now, and it's so funny. It actually aligns with a card I pulled this morning. I feel it for your audience, Rudy. There's an opportunity right now and an energetic opening and ask an invitation to really bridge our humanity and the divine more than ever. And I think sometimes when we're in this work, we can swing one way, like when we really tap into this and someone's maybe they're newer in your ecosystem or they've been here for a long time and they know the power of feeling connected to spirit. They understand there's so much more beyond what we see. I remember when I had that experience, I actually had about a year where I felt so disconnected from human Elise. I was so like in another world and it was beautiful, but at the same time, you're here in a human body for a reason. You're here to be this incarnation of you for a reason. You're here to be the star of your own movie. So, whatever it means for someone listening to bridge, to bring together your full humanity and your full divinity and to bring more of both into your life right now and to love both equally and let both be totally accepted in your experience. That's what I'm feeling for your group. So I trust people will let that land however it's meant to. I think that's the best closing question I've ever been asked on a podcast. I love that. That's
I
beautiful.
love that. Thank you. You know
Yeah.
what I love about that is it gives people a window into the person that I'm talking to that doesn't come through just the questions because you're so versed at what you do and we are so passionate about what we do, but it is not all of who we are. And that question opens us up to so much more. I don't think there's a person that hasn't listened to this that has not thought like, gosh, I can relate to her. I can see myself in her story, masculine or feminine. I think it is just such a powerful conversation. And I opened the episode saying there isn't a person on the planet who doesn't want to make more money. I mean, I have met some people who pretend they don't like money, but everybody wants to make more money. And it doesn't have to be hard, it gets to be easy. And once we plug in the proverbial vacuum cleaner, we get to leverage the benevolence and the divinity of all the energy that is around us. And money, as you have so beautifully shared today, is just a tool to amplify who we are and who we've ultimately come here to being. I am going to encourage my audience to learn so much more about you in the show notes. At least, thank you so much for your time today. And to our audience, I just want to end this episode today by saying I love you. Wherever this episode finds you, you have traveled this journey. And this is the moment where you get to decide who you want to be next. And information in and of itself is worthless unless you do something with it. So I'm going to challenge you to do something with something that you've learned here today. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Love you. Bye. If this episode gave you clarity, peace, or a perspective shift, hold on to that. And here is how you lock it in. Subscribe so that you keep building momentum week after week. And if you're the kind of person that believes a good message should travel, please leave a review. Reviews aren't just ratings. There are signals that help this reach the people who are ready for it. And then share this episode with somebody you love, someone you lead, or somebody that you were rooting for. Links are in the show notes so that you can connect with me online and on Instagram. Now go out there and take one beautiful, bold, and aligned step and make it count. I'm going to catch you on the next episode of the Empowered Life Podcast.